No one was prepared for what happened next. As Jasmine Guy slowly stepped up to the microphone at Malcolm Jamal Warner's funeral, the atmosphere shifted. A hush fell over the room. Grief, reverence, and anticipation hung thick in the air. Known for her grace and poise, Jasmine's voice trembled with emotion as she began to speak. What followed wasn't just a tribute, it was a soul-shattering moment of truth, love, and vulnerability that left the entire room in tears. This wasn't scripted Hollywood heartbreak. This was raw, real, and unforgettable. What she revealed in those few moments stunned even the closest friends and family. With Malcolm's casket just feet away, Jasmine shared a secret the world had never heard, something Malcolm had entrusted to her. Something sacred. Her words peeled back the public image and exposed the tender, private side of a man millions thought they knew. Today, we're diving deep into that unforgettable moment, uncovering the truth behind Jasmine's tribute and the hidden chapter of Malcolm's life that brought everyone in the room and those watching around the world to their knees. This was the moment that shattered everyone. Hollywood has seen emotional farewells before, but what unfolded at Malcolm Jamal Warner's funeral defied expectation and pierced through the heart of every person in that room. As friends, family, and fans gathered to honor a man whose legacy transcended the screen, it wasn't the speeches, the music, or the familiar faces that stole the moment. It was Jasmine Guy. The actress, friend, and co-star took to the stage not just to speak, but to bare her soul. Her tribute was raw, unfiltered, and devastatingly beautiful. As her voice cracked and tears ran down her face, the crowd fell silent, and by the time her final words echoed through the room, even the strongest were weeping. But what did Jasmine say that silenced an entire room filled with stars? What long-held truth did she finally unveil in front of Malcolm's casket, something she had guarded for years? In this video, we take you deep into that unforgettable moment. Every word, every glance, every tear. We'll explore the hidden layers of Jasmine and Malcolm's unspoken bond, the personal letters exchanged in private, the emotional calls never shared with the public, and the one confession that turned a tribute into a revelation. This wasn't just a goodbye, it was a love letter, a confession, and a reckoning that left Hollywood forever changed. You won't believe the note Malcolm supposedly left behind only days before he passed away, or who else spoke. It becomes emotional at this point. It gets raw at this point, and no fan should miss this tribute. The air in the room was heavy with emotion. Malcolm Jamal Warner was an actor, singer, and guy who had impacted numerous lives in both public and private ways. The theater was packed with family members, long-standing co-stars, and Hollywood friends, each of whom had their own recollections of the man. However, the mood changed as the service progressed from emotional eulogies to individual tributes. Whispers erupted as Jasmine Guy, holding a soiled piece of paper in her shaking hands, cautiously moved out of her seat. It was unexpected to many. Since learning of Malcolm's untimely and terrible death, Jasmine has maintained a low profile, reportedly due to difficulties from a drowning event that still raises suspicions. She was standing in the front of the room now, though, her eyes glazed with grief. You could hear a pin drop as soon as she opened her mouth. The commotion ceased. The camera stopped. They sat in astonished silence, even the strongest of them, those who had known Malcolm for decades. She started with a quiet whisper rather than with a speech. "I said I wouldn't weep, Malcolm. I lied, though." The emotional hit was the first, and it would not be the last. You sensed it from the opening line. This was not going to be your average tribute from Hollywood. It wasn't staged. There was no script for this. This was excruciating torture. Everyone could sense the years of love, memories, regrets, and secrets rising to the surface. There was a big black and white picture of Malcolm as a young man behind Jasmine, his quiet power, his piercing gaze from recent serious performances, and his famous smile from The Cosby Show. The casket lay in front of her, just a few feet away, and everything was altered by what Jasmine said next. But before we get into that momentous admission, let's take a moment to look back, because you need to know the truth about her relationship with Malcolm Jamal Warner in order to appreciate the impact of what she said. Malcolm Jamal Warner and Jasmine Guy appeared to the outside world to be only two stars circling the same universe. She was Whitley Gilbert, the legendary character from another planet. He was Theo Huxtable from The Cosby Show, of course. They are both adored and closely associated with Bill Cosby's television empire. However, the majority of fans were unaware that these two had a bond that went much beyond their sporadic appearances and grins on the red carpet. When Malcolm started appearing as a guest star on A Different World in the late 1980s, their friendship was born. Jasmine was under a lot of pressure behind the scenes and at the height of her celebrity at the time. Malcolm, who had always been the silent bystander, soon became her confidant. According to close friends, their initial conversations between takes evolved into in-depth late-night phone calls and spiritual discussions about life, love, and the price of celebrity. Malcolm was the only one who witnessed Jasmine crying after the network imposed artistic alterations on a new reality. According to one of her closest friends, modifications that eliminated important cultural motifs and softened its meaning. Jasmine once stated in an interview from 2004 that he would come to my trailer just to sit with me, just to be there, not to cure things. And Malcolm stood out for that reason. He wasn't ostentatious. He wasn't looking for attention. He was there. And Jasmine found solace in someone who just listened in a world full of people who were only interested in making news. They came and went from each other's public lives over the years. Their relationship, however, remained constant. Rumors circulated in the late 1990s when they were seen holding hands and laughing like high school sweethearts at a jazz club in Los Angeles. But they never confirmed any romantic involvement. Both, however, consistently denied that it was romantic. Some souls find each other, not to date or marry, but to heal, Jasmine would explain. Malcolm was one of those individuals in her life for decades. However, Jasmine's admission at the funeral, something she had never done in public before, would give their relationship a deeper dimension. It was a letter, a parting message, and a final promise that she broke. You won't believe what transpired in the days leading up to Malcolm's death, though. Before we reach that heartbreaking moment, fans are just now learning about a voicemail he left. And what he said in it made his closest friends and family members shudder. Death tends to leave questions unsolved, but occasionally, just occasionally, it leaves behind faint echoes, whispers of what a person may have felt, heard, or dreaded in their last moments. And those murmurs about Malcolm Jamal Warner appeared in the shape of a voicemail, a poignant, eerie message that now seems almost prescient. Malcolm left a voicemail for a close friend and producer he had collaborated with on a recent jazz album, just 3 days prior to his untimely death. Insiders who later listened to the recording said Malcolm sounded composed, too quiet. He expressed gratitude to the producer for consistently encouraging his artistic freedom. Then, almost suddenly, he said something spooky. Tell them I felt at peace if something were to happen to me. Take a moment to process the information. Those weren't just any words. The people closest to him were rocked to their foundations by those statements. Did it happen by accident? Or did Malcolm sense something? Was he aware of the passing of time? Some people think it was instinct. Some speculate that it was a mysterious farewell written in the words of a man who had seen too much, carried too much, and maybe thought that his time was coming to an end. What he did after leaving that voicemail is even more enigmatic. Malcolm reportedly called a number of folks he hadn't spoken to in a long time. Former Cosby castmates, old college pals, and even a distant cousin he hadn't seen since his early years in New Jersey. Jasmine Guy was the recipient of one such call. Those close to her say she was clearly shaken in the days after the call, even if she hasn't fully revealed what they discussed. He sounded different, she insisted, like if he were letting go. According to a family source, this has caused a lot of admirers and even former co-workers to wonder if Malcolm had silent depression or if there was more going on behind the scenes than the public ever knew, because everything appeared to be going well on the outside. We're forced to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about Malcolm's last days as we think back on that voicemail, those terrifying last words. He had just finished a musical project, was working on a new film script, and had plans to start an independent podcast. But behind that genius, was there a burden he never shared? And when you hear it, you'll understand why fans say this was the most powerful moment of the entire ceremony. At his funeral, Jasmine Guy stood up and revealed a secret that Malcolm had asked her to keep. You could hear her breath catch as she stood in front of the crowd, the folded letter trembling in her hand. Jasmine looked out into the sea of faces, some familiar, some strangers, all bound together by one heartbreaking truth. A hush fell over the room once more, and even those who had been sobbing quietly moments before sat up straight. Her body language conveyed that this was different. that this was not just another Hollywood tribute, that this was personal, and that it was sacred. She opened the letter and started reading, but it wasn't just any letter, it was a handwritten note Malcolm had given Jasmine almost 7 years ago, hidden inside a book he gave her during a spiritual retreat in Sedona. "He told me never to share this," she said, her voice cracking, "but I know Malcolm, and he would have wanted you all to hear it now. This wasn't just a friendship, this was so deep." The crowd gasped softly. "You were the calm in my chaos. When the lights blinded me, you helped me see. When the world told me to be Theo forever, you reminded me that Malcolm mattered too." Jasmine added, "If I die before I say this out loud, let this be my truth. I cherished you. Since our world wouldn't have understood, I adored you in silence, but I carried you in every song, every word, every breath." By this time, a lot of people in the audience were crying, including seasoned actors like Debbie Allen and Kadeem Hardison, who were reportedly crying so much that they needed assistance getting out of their seats so they could gather themselves. Then Jasmine paused. "He asked me to burn this letter, but I refused because I always knew that one day this day might arrive and that the world would need to know who he really was." Malcolm was more than just Theo, the scripts, and the celebrity. He was a poet, a giver, and a man who could heal you simply by sitting next to you. She looked down before saying something that truly stunned everyone. "Don't mourn me. Remember me when you hear laughter, because that's where I live most." Jasmine's voice softened as she concluded the reading with Malcolm's last words. The silence that followed wasn't simply quiet, it was reverent. People weren't merely grieving a man, they were facing the reality of who he was and the love he left behind, which so few ever knew existed. The surprises didn't stop there, though, because as the funeral came to an end, a video message that Malcolm had recorded just months earlier would play on a screen behind the altar. Jasmine stepped back from the podium, folded the letter again, and kissed it before gently placing it on top of his casket. It was a moment so unvarnished and intimate that it will live on in Black Hollywood history forever, and his words made everyone in the room wonder if he knew something we didn't. As the service was coming to an end, and many people thought the most poignant parts were over, organizers took the audience by surprise when a huge projector screen fell from the ceiling. The lights went down, and then his face appeared. Malcolm Jamal Warner was there, smiling, composed, alive, and talking straight to the camera. The room erupted in gasps. Some people covered their mouths, and Jasmine Guy instantly covered her heart. This was no rehashed interview or unofficial video. It was a recording made just a few months prior to his passing, and it was simply titled, "If I'm Gone. If you're watching this, then I'm not here anymore." Malcolm remarked at the opening of the video, which featured him sitting in a simple room with books and musical instruments. There was no lighting or staging, just him being himself. "And I simply want to say thank you if I'm not present. I appreciate you allowing me to change, not forcing me to be the boy I used to be, and allowing me to be a man you may not have known completely." "You see, the world clapped for Theo," he said with a half smile, but no one asked Malcolm how he was doing. He continued to reflect on his life, his identity struggles, the weight of early fame, and the silent battles with depression he had kept hidden for decades. After that one sentence emotionally broke the crowd. Even though the video was short, just under 6 minutes, each second was as intense as a freight train. He talked about his regrets, the individuals he wishes he had loved more, and how music helped him cope when words couldn't express his feelings. Yes, he did bring up Jasmine. His eyes softened as he said, "If Jasmine is in the room, I hope she doesn't mind that I didn't say something when I could have. However, I cherished you. My secure heaven was you, and I would never have allowed the industry to stifle that reality if I could go back in time and change my life." At this point, Jasmine started to cry clearly, and numerous other people could be seen sobbing while hugging each other. It didn't feel like a farewell because of the spiritual clarity, the weight, and the honesty. It was a sense of closure. The last message, the one that transformed sorrow into motivation, then arrived. "Don't cry for me too long. Laugh, love, create, and for heaven's sake, take care of your mental health. You matter more than the role they gave you. Find your real name again like I did," Malcolm added, grinning one more time as he looked straight into the lens. The screen then faded to black. Applause followed by silence. First slow, then louder, swelling like a tide of praise and anguish. It was no longer merely a tribute. It was a turning point in time. That day, people started to leave the church, not only because his death was tragic, but also because his message was clear. Malcolm Jamal Warner left behind more than just his legacy. He left the mirror behind, urging us to examine ourselves, love more loudly, and live more authentically. Everyone realized then that this wasn't merely a farewell. This was just the start. However, there is one more twist to the tale before we wrap up this chapter. Fans all throughout the world are in complete amazement of something Jasmine did following the burial. The ceremony was over. People were quietly hugging each other and wiping their eyes as they slowly made their way outside. Jasmine Guy remained behind, still clearly upset. As the church emptied, she stood by herself before Malcolm's casket, carefully following the edge of the note she had previously put. However, she had also brought something else, something that would quickly gain widespread popularity and represent all that Malcolm stood for. Jasmine took a little hardcover journal out of her purse. She and Malcolm had been working on a secret poetry book for more than 10 years, according to people close to her, and the inscription on the front read, "For the one who listened," a covert artistic endeavor never intended for public consumption that documented their mutual introspection, private correspondence, poetry, and emotional interactions. It had never been seen before. However, Jasmine gave it to Malcolm's sister with a single request following the funeral: "Put it out there. Allow the world to read the aspects of Malcolm that they were unable to see." Fans and media outlets learned about the book in a matter of days. The cover gained widespread attention. Celebrities, musicians, poets, mental health advocates, and even educators who had grown up watching Malcolm but were unaware of the depth of the man behind the grin all sent tributes to him on social media. A week later, Jasmine made an appearance on a private Instagram Live. Malcolm Jamal Warner's legacy is that she remarked, in a passionate, tearful moment, "I didn't just lose a friend. I lost a part of my soul, but I want his voice to keep speaking, not through television, but through truth. Not merely a collection of artwork, but also a collection of truth, feeling, and spiritual presence, a guy who dared to feel profoundly in a field that frequently stifles genuine emotion." Malcolm quietly lived with purpose, produced with integrity, and loved with a depth that few people have ever comprehended in a world that is fixated on appearances. What does this signify for us then? Perhaps we should all take a moment to see how people we presume to be strong are doing. Perhaps it's time to value our relationships even more, to express the things we keep hidden, and to produce even when no one else is looking. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's time to give the people who listen flowers before they pass away. We appreciate you viewing this homage to a man whose contributions influenced a generation and whose unspoken heart is currently transforming lives, even as he passes away. Please don't stop here. If this tale touched you, similar to this video, give it to a loved one of Malcolm Jamal Warner. Leave a comment below with your favorite statement or recollection from Jasmine Guy or from him. Together, let's respect their truth. To ensure that you never miss another tribute like this, subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell if you want more tales like this one, stories that are genuine, poignant, and unforgettable. We speak the truth, we uplift the stories that others are too scared to share, and we protect legacy. Malcolm, may you rest in peace. Theo was never all that you were. There was always more in you.